into your life, you look at life differently. So it's hard to tell someone in their 20s how they should be till they've experienced certain things. There are certain things that just be words. But if I was going to give a couple habits, I'd say the first habit is to not judge yourself too hard, because I think that's what young people do a lot, and I think people do of all ages. You know, when you're 61 years old and you've lived as much life as I have, a little less judgment of myself in this area. It's not make everything life and death, because then the kid feels that, and it isn't all life and death. I got to be honest. I thought when my daughter's crying is like, I hate anybody in pain. I thought it was gonna just pierce me and make life so difficult. But fortunately, number one, she doesn't cry. She's like, I told my wife, I don't know how this kid came from us, because this kid is so zen. She cries when she's got to go to the bathroom, and she's got a diaper. She cries when she's hungry, but otherwise she's pretty zen. But the cry even then is different for me now. So it's not life and death. I'm not hyper judgmental of it. And then the third thing is decide what's most important that you want for your child, the 2 or 3 most important things. For me, it's that child feels so incredibly loved. And for me, not yet. But as the child develops, it's developing a sense that life is something that's calling to you to give something, not to get something.
We'll uncover the secrets of the spirits, discuss the power of words, and reveal the true monsters lurking in the depths of our fears. Prepare yourself for a journey filled with discoveries, questions, and maybe even some good laughs. Ready to dive in?
I think if I could give any lesson to my child, it's the lesson of contribution, which makes life so meaningful, the depth of relationship that comes from having such a deep love. I think those 2 things are the minimum, but you got to decide, what do you want for your child? Because, they're their own being. You're gonna have your plans, how you think they should be, and then they're gonna be how they are, right? But what you can shape is their value system. And not every individual value, but the global values. That life is a balance, that of course you're gonna go to extremes, but balance is how the body maintains, it's how life gets in balance. It's like, look for that. It's like, life is not about me, it's about we. That life is calling to you to give something. Don't ask what your country's asking for you, as a Democratic president once said. What are you gonna do for your country? We kind of lost that theme, not only in our country, but in our parenting. And so I see a lot of kids today that are like, what is my parent doing for me? I could never imagine that thought in my life. My whole thing was like, what can I do for my parents was my focus. What can I do? And all those little patterns lead to a life that is more meaningful and fulfilling. But I don't think over-controlling is not gonna get you where you wanna go based on my history, because this isn't my first rodeo. I got 4 children before that, 3 of which I adopted. So I was 24 and had a 17-year-old son instantly, an 11-year-old, a 5-year-old, and one on the way. So you learn to grow differently. And my former spouse who had those kids, she'd been married twice before me, so they were from different parents. And so I adopted them all and brought them in my life. Probably got some of the greatest growth in my life from that experience of parenting.
And for those that grew up and don't feel like they got the love they wanted, or the love they deserved, or the love they were supposed to have, or whatever, and people haven't learned how to love themselves, whether it be because they didn't get it from their parents or they didn't learn it, how can they learn to love themselves later in their life when they never really felt it?
I think this idea of loving yourself as a cultural obsession has no basis in reality. Here's the challenge. When you're born, what do you got to do to be loved? Nothing. Because your mother's on drugs, natural drugs, oxytocin. So you look like a lizard and she thinks you're beautiful, right? You're fat, you shit all over, you throw up, and you're still beautiful, right? For a while, you're unconditionally loved. And thank God, we wouldn't have survived otherwise. I love women so much. I have so much respect for women, even more so going through birth again. No man will ever fully appreciate what a woman does or what a baby demands of a mother if you're breastfeeding, and the energy and the no sleep. It's amazing what women do in our life. But the point is, in the beginning, you gotta do nothing. And then the oxytocin wears off, and suddenly you do the same scream or yell, throw your food, and now you get yelled at or hit, or the worst one of all, you get ignored. And then fear enters your body. And then the rest of your life, you're looking for, how can I get this unconditional love? And I remember in the beginning asking myself, because I studied all animals and what the level of dependency they have. And human beings have the longest period of dependency for survival of any creature other than other primates. Whales will be dependent for a year, birds for a few weeks, then boom, get your ass out there and fly, It's a different world. We have this long dependency. It's just the nature of how we are. And then I thought to myself, so why don't we just have unconditional love all the time? And I think my answer is because then you never grow or give anything to life. You think everything is about you. And unfortunately, there are a large population of kids that were raised in a generation of parents that were helicopter parents that thought everything should be about the child, and they wonder why they're selfish today. or why they, don't seem to have great relationships where you gotta be with somebody else, you gotta put somebody else ahead of you. That's what love is. Love is putting somebody else ahead of yourself. Loving yourself usually comes for most human beings by starting to have a value and just appreciating people, not because of what they do, not because of what they have, just because you feel their essence. And it's easier to do that with somebody you love than it's with yourself, but when you start to with somebody else and you're not judging, you're truly loving them, then it's much more natural because you're already doing the loving. You're not getting it from somewhere else. Someone may say something, look at you a certain way as a trigger, but all love is self-love. This bullshit, I don't love myself. If you've ever been someone who felt loved, you loved yourself. They didn't love you. They said something, they did something with their eyes, and you used that as a trigger to release love inside of you. But loving yourself every moment, all the time is not the secret to success. Having appreciation for yourself is different than constantly loving. Now, in the Bible, it says, love thy neighbor as thyself. So I think it's a worthy goal and it's useful, but most people are obsessed with it. And I think get on about living a life that's meaningful and you'll love yourself. As long as you focus on you, you're not gonna love you. Because the human brain is always looking for what's wrong, what to protect, what needs to be changed. It's a survival instinct. And so it's looking for things to fight or flight or try to freeze or pretend you're not there about yourself. But when you're in a bit of service, when you're trying to serve something more than yourself, that's when the higher part of your consciousness is there. That's when your heart is flowing. And when you're doing that, you're not thinking about you, and therefore you feel love. And I can tell you my own experience, no one else have to earn love with me, but my strategy has been I gotta earn my own love, right? I gotta be worthy of my own love. I don't do that to somebody else.
How do you do that?
Well, by helping millions of people for 44 years, now I'm finally at the stage where, I fucking love myself. I'm up there.
Right.
I enjoy myself, I appreciate it. But along the way, I've always earned it. Now, I don't think that's necessarily healthy or not, but I like what it's done with me. If I know people that just think they're God's gift to creation and they don't add any value to any other human being and they're assholes to be around. They love themselves. So I would challenge that whole belief system. I'd say it's appreciating yourself, it's loving the people around you, and the more you can unconditionally love others, the more you'll unconditionally love yourself. But trying to start with yourself when you're not doing with others, forget it, it'll never happen.
Was there ever a moment where you didn't unconditionally love yourself? And if so, when did that shift where you stopped that and you started saying, okay, I appreciate myself because of my contribution and my service and who I am? When was that shift?
I don't think it was ever I just didn't love myself. There were times, obviously, be angry with yourself or frustrated with yourself or thinking, I'm not doing enough. I mean, I can remember my birthdays, to be honest with you, probably up to my 40th birthday, including my 40th birthday. You have a birthday with a 0 on it once you're over past 30, 35, sometimes 5 years on it as well. People look at their life differently culturally. And I used to think it was bullshit, but sure enough, I would do it. I remember turning 40 and I was really, really unhappy. I was like, Jesus, I've not done enough. I've not helped enough people. I know tens of millions of people at that point already, done all over the earth in 100 plus countries at that point, but it was still kind of stuck in my head. So I would earn the love by over-delivering, change somebody's life. Like, I don't get it because somebody says, oh, I love you, Tony. I mean, I appreciate that, or oh, you're the greatest. It's gotta be my standard. My standard's higher than their standard for me. Right? So when I get up and someone's gonna kill themselves and they're suicidal and boom, turn around and they're no longer not gonna kill themselves, but they're transformed, their life is there, that's when I go, okay, now we've hit the center of what I'm made for. Now, I deserve to feel this euphoric feeling within myself and appreciation. And even then, I still know it's God coming through me. I don't have the delusion it's just me. But I think sometime after 40, I finally saw the stupidity of it and I accumulated enough that I looked at life with fresh eyes. And I can say by the time I turned 60 a year ago, I noticed it was interesting because my birthday, I didn't have an ounce of it. I was just like, how could I at this stage of my life when I've had the privilege of serving so many humans in so many contexts, from turning around, guys are gonna kill themselves with PTSD to helping kids turn around to getting kids off cocaine or adults to, helping people build multi-billion-dollar businesses from nothing. And when I've lived this long, I can't go by without hearing half a dozen stories a day or dozen stories a day from people telling me how something I did changed their life. So it's not that I'm so smart now, it's just I've stacked it. By the way, though, stacking is the way you can do things. Most of us stack the negative. If you are really angry, it's not usually because it's just the moment. It's that it happened again. It's like if you've ever lost it or overreacted to your kid or to a friend or a business or even within yourself, It's because it happened again. We hit this 1, 2, 3 mini point, and then our nervous system overreacts. But what I've learned is you can stack the good. But for example, if you go into a state of really strong anger for more than 5 minutes, your immune system is suppressed between an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's a physiological fact. But no one had done any study. I started stacking good. Like, okay, let me stack a dozen great memories, feel them, see them, experience them. And I felt this biochemical change that didn't just last a half hour, an hour, or 10 minutes. It went on for a day or two. And so I think I've learned to stack the good. So just having the experience is not enough. You got to stack the good to be able to appreciate it. But I think, just come back to the main point here from my perspective, which could be completely just my perspective. So I want to point that out. I think the more you find unconditional love for others, the easier it is to find in yourself. And I think the focus is serving and loving, and that's what will get you to the point where you start doing it. But if you want to speed it up, stack all the good you've done, you'll feel great about yourself.
I already know all the comments that have come through. Thousands of comments tell me, but what about my family that's toxic? What about my partner who's toxic? And how do I love someone unconditionally when they don't respect me? I can't trust them. What about situations like
all
that?
Those reactions are natural human reactions from ego. Because it's all about you, me, what I'm not getting, what I'm not doing, and that's why you're in pain. And so I'm not telling you like I haven't done this shit. I've done it too in the past, but it's an old pattern I don't really do anymore, and it used to affect me. Now, not a dominant one, I wouldn't have become who I become. Early in my life, I developed this belief that life is calling not to give me something, life is calling for me to deliver things, for me to bring something to life. And I felt the joy that came from not getting but giving, and I got hooked on that core pattern, and then the pattern of learning so I'd have something to give, which I know one of the things I respect about you, Lewis, is that you have that same pattern in you. You're always trying to learn more because underneath it all, you also want to give it. You want it for you, but you want to share it, right? And so those patterns help me not be in what they're not giving. And all this language, today people don't understand the power of their language, like toxic. What the hell are you talking about? You've been reading too much social media and thinking about yourself, or somebody raised you to constantly judge everybody else. We live in a culture now where people, you're evil or you're like me. That's basically how it is, right? The whole world, everybody else is immoral unless they do what you do, think what you think, experience what you think. I mean, being a liberal, I was a liberal, right? Being a liberal growing up meant I would fight for your ability to say and believe whatever you want different than me. Today now, everybody wants everybody to think the same thing, otherwise they're evil, or otherwise they could hurt me. Whatever happened to sticks and stones will break your bones and words will never hurt me? We have this whole thing that words are evil, words are action, it's bullshit. And all it does is make you incredibly weak as a human being, and you're more than that. We all are more than that. But you know what? Like a kid that's never broken their bones, deathly afraid of breaking the bone. But if you're a kid and you're rough and tumble, you broke multiple bones and they healed, you don't have any fear of it. There's so many kids that have been raised to be safe and secure every moment. Anything that's insecure or unsafe, they don't want to be a part of, including language. And what it does is make you incredibly weak and fearful. And that's why there's so many people that are abundant that are angry all the time. Because they're angry because they're not growing. So don't get me wrong. I know some people are not a good influence. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying you're more than somebody's influence unless you obsess about it every moment and make them wrong so you can make yourself feel superior morally, psychologically, or spiritually. That's bullshit. Stop the pattern. We've all done it. Catch yourself. Because if you want joy, happiness, and freedom and an extraordinary life, it will not come from blame.